remember the building as a quiet place at the edge of town, a community church standing over a patch of land that always felt colder than the air around it. People said the soil had been unsettled for decades, but no one explained why. It was where my friend lived then, in the house that shared the same property line with the chapel. The spaces were close enough that their walls seemed to breathe into each other. I was there often after school, not because the place was comfortable, but because the hours passed strangely there. The hallways stretched longer at night, and the rooms felt like they waited for someone to enter first. That afternoon, the kids were running around the old storage wing, chasing each other through narrow corridors that led toward a room used for choir robes and donated clothes. They called it the wardrobe room, though it looked more like an archive of forgotten fabric, hanging in uneven rows that brushed against the floor like abandoned shadows. The air inside was different, still, heavy, the kind of stillness that holds breath. We played a simple game at first. Hide, wait, listen. The kind of thing children invent when they feel something watching but pretend not to notice. I went deeper into the wardrobe room, between the long curtains of old church garments. A soft scrape echoed behind me, the sound of fabric shifting when nothing should have moved. I thought it was one of the younger kids trying to scare me. But the scrape repeated, higher up the wall this time. When I pushed the robes aside, I saw her not clearly, just the outline of a girl standing between the hanging cloth. The light from the hallway didn't reach her face. All I saw was the pale suggestion of a figure, head tilted slightly, as if she had been waiting behind the robes long before any of us entered. I stepped back. The floor creaked, and the sound traveled too slowly, almost delayed, as if the air had thickened. She didn't move. Not at first. The younger kids ran past the doorway, laughing, their footsteps sharp and real. For a moment, the room returned to something ordinary, a place where robes gathered dust and air didn't hold secrets. Then she shifted, only a fraction. Her head angled toward the hall, recognizing the sound of the others. The fabric near her legs moved without touching the ground. Disturbed by something breathing close to her shape, I didn't call out. I didn't ask who she was. Something about her posture carried a quiet message. She wasn't supposed to be here. The church didn't allow anyone into that wing without supervision. The families who lived nearby never mentioned a girl her age. And the way she stood, still, patient, almost absorbed into the fabric, suggested she hadn't walked in at all. She had simply been there. A soft laugh drifted from her direction. It wasn't a child's giggle. It was the thin, breathy echo of someone remembering how to imitate children. I stepped closer to the doorway without turning my back on her. The hallway outside looked narrow, as if pulled tighter by the room behind me. The lights flickered once, then held steady. When I looked back into the wardrobe room, she was no longer where she had been. The robes were still swaying. I didn't see her walk out. I didn't hear her steps, but a faint rustle trailed along the ceiling, moving in a slow, deliberate line toward the far corner, as though she were climbing where a child shouldn't be able to climb. One of the kids called my name from the hall, asking if I was joining them. The sound pulled me out of the room like a rope tightening around my chest. When I stepped back into the corridor, the air felt lighter, but something followed. An awareness, a quiet weight, pressing against the back of my neck. It felt like she had chosen me. For the rest of the day, every sound seemed a little off. Doors that should have stayed open drifted shut. The hallway near the bathrooms grew colder with each hour. The children's voices echoed too long, stretched thin like something else was repeating their tones a heartbeat late. When dusk settled, we headed outside toward the playground near the lot. The sky dimmed faster than usual, and the shapes around us blurred before the street lamps flickered on. I looked up toward the church's second-floor window. For a moment, she was there again. The same tilt of the head, the same dark outline framed by the dim interior. No movement. No sound. Just a presence observing us from behind the glass. I knew then that the wardrobe room hadn't been an isolated moment. She had followed something out when the robe swayed. A boundary had shifted. And deep down, I sensed the truth before I could name it. That girl wasn't supposed to be in the wardrobe. She wasn't supposed to be in the hallway. She wasn't supposed to be anywhere. But she was, and night was coming. Night settled early around the church that week. The kind of dusk that doesn't fade but collapses all at once. By the time we stepped out toward the small playground behind the building, the lamps along the lot were already humming, stretching long shadows across the swings. I tried to forget what I saw in the wardrobe room, but it stayed with me. Quiet, weightless, like someone walking just behind my shoulder. The bathroom sat at the far end of the corridor, near the back exit. A narrow hallway connected them to the outdoor steps leading to the playground. The corridor always smelled faintly of cold stone and something metallic, like rainwater trapped where it didn't belong. As we passed by, one of the other kids ran inside. I lingered at the doorway, not wanting to follow. That's when I saw her again. She was standing near the sinks, half hidden by the cracked mirror. The fluorescent lights above her flickered, stretching her outline into something thinner than it should have been. Her head tilted, exactly as before, as if she recognized me from the wardrobe room, but this time, she spoke. Her voice didn't echo. It didn't vibrate. It just existed. Flat, steady, memorized. "This is my home." Not loud, not whispered. Just a statement, delivered like a line she had waited to use. A chill tightened along my spine. The church wasn't a home for anyone. It was a place people passed through, never occupied. No one lived here. No one stayed after dark. I didn't answer. I just stepped back into the hallway. The bathroom door eased shut behind me without fully closing, leaving a thin slit of darkness between us. Her shadow remained visible for a moment before sliding out of view, like someone stepping behind a curtain that wasn't there. The playground outside felt colder than before. The swings moved on their own, angles too slow for the wind to explain. The younger kids didn't notice. They climbed the slide and argued about turns. Their voices didn't quite match their mouths, the echoes repeating half a second late. Then I saw her again. She was near the old delivery truck parked beside the lot, standing in the open space between the cargo bed and the rusted wheels. The gap was too small for a person to stand comfortably, yet she stood there without bending or squeezing through. Just there, exactly the way something appears in a dream, placed, not arrived. Her dress brushed the gravel without touching it. Her eyes were fixed on the kids, unblinking, following their movements as though studying a pattern. When one of them ran toward her direction, she slipped underneath the truck in a single motion. No crouch, no shift in posture, just a smooth, sinking movement that didn't match the spaces a body should occupy. Her shape pressed against the underside for a moment, as though she were clinging there. I turned away, but the image remained etched in the air, a smear of something that shouldn't have been able to move like that. As the night grew darker, the others started getting picked up by their parents. Their voices dimmed, replaced by the static hum of the lamps overhead. By the time I walked back toward my friend's house, the parking lot was nearly empty. I made the mistake of glancing up. Across the property line, the house's small balcony overlooked the lot. Its railing was chipped, the paint peeling where rain gathered. I had seen that balcony hundreds of times. It always looked the same, except tonight something hung over it. A pair of small hands gripped the railing from the outside, fingers curled over the edge like someone was crawling along the exterior wall. A head rose slowly, too slowly, until I saw her face peeking over the ledge. The wardrobe girl. She didn't blink. She didn't tilt her head this time. She just stared, motionless, as if she had been climbing for hours, waiting for someone to finally look up. When our eyes met, she smiled. Not with her mouth, but with the slightest widening of the space around her eyes, as though she had just spotted something she had been searching for. My friend called me from inside the house, and I tore my gaze away. When I looked back, her hands were still there, gripping the railing, but the head was gone. No sound, no movement, just the faint impression of fingers that didn't belong to anyone living in that house. Inside, the lights flickered again. The living room felt smaller, the ceiling lower than usual. My friend talked about a movie, unaware that the air around us pulsed with a slow, uneven rhythm, as if something else had entered the house with me. Minutes passed, like hours. Every corner of the room felt watched. The hallway leading to the bedroom seemed to stretch, though I knew it hadn't changed. I tried to focus on anything normal. The sound of the TV, the warmth from the kitchen. But something else threaded through the space, a thin tension pulling my attention toward the far end of the hall. A soft thump, then another, light, deliberate, like a small hand patting the wall. I stepped closer. The hallway light buzzed overhead. The air grew colder, and the walls seemed to breathe with shallow, uneven pulses. The sound came again, a soft, dragging friction, like skin sliding against painted wood. Then I saw it. A hand pressed flat against the hallway wall nearly at the ceiling, fingers splayed unnaturally wide. Not large enough to be an adult's, not small enough to be one of the children's. Somewhere in between, as if the shape had been borrowed from memory rather than a real body. The hand slid upward, defying gravity, leaving the faintest smear behind. She was climbing, not with legs, not with steps, with intention. The wardrobe girl was moving along the wall toward the ceiling, pulling herself higher with a slow, deliberate rhythm. Her head turned toward me as she climbed, her face partly hidden by her hair, but her eyes fixed and aware. That was the moment I understood. She wasn't appearing at random. She was following something, tracing a path from the wardrobe room to the bathrooms, to the lot to the balcony, and now, inside the house. And she was moving in a way that suggested she already knew where the next place would be. A place she absolutely should not be. I had seen her climb before, but never like this. Never with intention, never with purpose. That night, the house wasn't simply quiet. It was listening. Every surface felt tense, as if waiting for something to press against it. Even the air inside the living room held a low vibration, like a string stretched too tight. My friend had gone to his room, leaving me alone on the couch with the dim lamp flickering in the corner. I tried to focus on the soft hum of the refrigerator, the muted voices from a TV somewhere down the street, anything normal. But the house wouldn't let me forget she was near. The sound began softly, a rhythmic patting, light and measured, as though someone small was testing each section of wall for a hollow space. Pat, a pause, pat, pat. Another pause. Not the sound of feet, not the shuffle of fabric. Just a palm, flat and deliberate, pressing against painted drywall. I stood slowly, letting my eyes adjust to the dim hallway leading to the bedrooms. The space looked unchanged, yet the shadows felt heavier, layered, as if something settled inside them. Then I saw her hand, not moving at first, just resting on the wall near the ceiling again. Fingers spread, joints angled wrong, the shape too precise to be a shadow, yet too still to belong to someone alive. One finger twitched, then another. Her palm slid upward against the wall with a slow scrape, as though she was testing the surface for a better grip. And then, in a single, fluid shift, her other hand appeared beside it, reaching from a direction no body could have reached from. She was climbing, but not toward the ceiling, toward the center of the hallway, toward where a person would walk. I could hear her breathing now, not fast, not labored, just steady, familiar, like someone mimicking the rhythm of a human breath without fully understanding how lungs worked. Her head emerged next, rising from below the frame of sight. First her hair, dark and weightless. Then part of her face, angled toward me even as her body still clung to the wall. She wasn't crawling like an animal. She wasn't climbing like a person. She was moving, purposeful, mechanical, like a memory replaying itself along a surface that didn't matter. Her eyes found mine before the rest of her body caught up. That frozen moment, the stare, was the first time I realized something simple and terrifying. She wasn't following me. She was learning me. I stepped back, but the air didn't shift. The house absorbed every movement, every breath, stretching the silence so thin that I could hear the faintest friction of her palms dragging along the wall. Then, she moved first. The sound hit before the motion reached my eyes. A sharp slap of a hand connecting with the ceiling, followed by another and another, each one faster than the last. She reached the ceiling in seconds. Her body hung there unnaturally, limbs suspended and wrong, hair falling straight down as if gravity had forgotten she existed. She crawled forward, her head rotating slowly until her face was upside down, watching me from above. The house darkened around her. The single lamp behind me flickered, dimmed, then steadied in a weaker glow, as if the bulb was being drained by her presence. She made another sound, not from her mouth, but from her hands. Each palm smacked the ceiling with a soft, sticky thud, leaving faint prints behind, marks shaped like hands, yet not aligned with any human bone structure. They were too long, too thin, the fingers stretched in ways that defied the shape of a child's body. She circled above me, slow and measured, as though mapping the boundary of the room. Her movements traced an invisible pattern, repeating certain arcs, avoiding certain corners, almost like she recognized barriers I couldn't see. A thought settled into me then, unwelcome, cold, but clear. She wasn't wandering. She was confined. Whatever she wasn't supposed to leave the wardrobe. She wasn't supposed to cross those walls. She wasn't supposed to reach this house. And yet she had. Her head lowered closer, the gap between her face and mine shrinking until I could see every small detail she allowed me to see. The absence of breath, the faint shimmer of dust clinging to her skin, the way her eyes looked like they remembered light rather than reflected it. Then her mouth moved. Not open, not fully forming words, just the stiff separation of lips shaping a single, learned phrase. Not your home. Her voice was wrong again. Not echoed, not whispered, repeated, recited, like she was trying on the sentence to see how it fit inside her. The ceiling groaned, and a crack threaded outward from her hand. She followed it with her eyes, almost curious, then snapped her attention back to me, as if the house itself had corrected her. The air turned colder. A pressure built behind my ears. Every instinct screamed to move, but my limbs tightened, not from fear, but from the overwhelming sense that any sudden action would make her react faster, and she could move so much faster. Her body shifted, preparing to drop. Her fingers bent backward against the ceiling like hooks, ready to release all at once. But then, something stopped her. She froze mid-motion, head turning sharply toward the hallway window. Her entire posture changed, as if reacting to a rule I couldn't see. A boundary, a barrier, something that held power over her. Her mouth closed slowly. Her hand slipped from the ceiling, and she retreated. Not climbing down, not crawling back, but folding into the shadows at the corner where wall met ceiling, as though disappearing into a space too thin to contain anything living. She was gone, but the handprints remained, faint and smudged, slowly fading like mist on glass. I sat for a long time in that silence, trying to understand the pattern. The wardrobe room, the bathrooms, the lot, the balcony, the hallway, the ceiling. None of it random, none of it accidental. Each place she appeared carried the same unspoken warning. She shouldn't have been there. Not in the wardrobe, not outside, not under the truck, not on the balcony, not on the ceiling. So why was she? What was she following? What rule was she testing? And what kept pulling her closer to me? I didn't have answers that night. Only the certainty that she would come again. And the next time, she wouldn't freeze. She wouldn't wait. She wouldn't retreat. She had moved first. And next time, she would expect me to move back. I thought the wardrobe girl was the only presence following me. But I was wrong. The pattern had already begun long before that night on the ceiling. I just didn't recognize it because it didn't start with a child. It started with a grown man. There was someone in my life once, someone I tried to leave quietly, a relationship that had frayed long before it ended, unraveling thread by thread until only the shape of something unhealthy remained. When I walked away, I believed distance would dissolve whatever was left between us, but distance meant nothing to someone who lived on repetition. The first sign came as a message, short, disjointed, almost hesitant. Then another and another, each one arriving at odd hours, as if sent from places where time didn't carry meaning. The words didn't matter. What mattered was the pattern. The persistence, the need to assert presence, the inability to let silence stand. Soon it wasn't just messages. It was standing outside my building at night, not knocking, not shouting, just existing in the dark, a shape against the glow of the street lamp, as if waiting for a signal I hadn't given. Sometimes I'd hear the sound of metal tapping against the railing of the stairs, slow, steady, like a coin dragged with intention. Other times, it was the faint scrape of shoes, shifting weight, but never walking away. I told myself it was nothing, that people linger sometimes, that my mind was filling gaps with fear because of the things I had seen at the church. But then the nights changed. One evening, the air outside felt different, too still, too deliberate. I was in bed, half asleep, when a soft thump echoed from the hallway. Not loud, not alarming, just enough to turn my breath cold. A second thump followed, heavier, then a sound like fabric brushing against the door. I sat up slowly, listening. The building felt muted, as though wrapped in cotton. No footsteps, no voices from neighboring apartments. Just breathing. Not my own. pressing faintly through the space under the door. When I approached, the floor felt cold beneath my feet. A shadow shifted beneath the crack, not the movement of someone pacing, but the stillness of someone kneeling, waiting. I didn't open the door. Hours passed like that. The presence stayed. When dawn finally filtered through the window, the shadow was gone, but the feeling remained that someone had been there long before I woke, listening through the wood, memorizing the rhythm of my breathing. Days later, he called. Not to speak, just to breathe. Long, uneven, shuddering breaths, as if he wanted me to answer in the same pattern I hung up. But the phone rang again moments later. And again. Each time, the same silence trailing behind the call, a quiet occupancy of space that felt almost rehearsed. Then came the night everything shifted. It started with crying. Soft at first, muffled by the hallway walls, then clearer as it drew closer. A low, broken sob. The kind that sounds practiced, as though someone repeats it over and over to perfect the tone. It settled outside my door. No knocking, just crying. Heavy, rhythmic, almost patterned. Like someone performing grief, not feeling it. I turned the lock quietly and pressed my ear to the wood. The sobbing stopped instantly. Silence. Then, a whisper, close enough that the vibration trembled through the door. Found you. The words weren't spoken the way a person speaks. They slid out like something remembering language. A tone too flat to be human emotion, too exact to be an accident. I stepped back, the floor creaking beneath me. The crying returned, louder, rawer, but now I realized it wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from inside the walls, threading through the building like water moving through cracks. The lights flickered, a pulse in the dark, and then everything went still. My body refused to move, not out of fear, but from something heavier. Something pressing down from above like unseen hands holding my limbs in place, sleep paralysis. I had never felt it before, but it settled over me like a second skin. My eyes were open, but the room reshaped itself, shadows thickening into silhouettes that didn't belong. A figure took form near the corner of the ceiling, hanging the same way the wardrobe girl had. Limbs suspended, head tilted, moving too slowly to be real. But it wasn't her. It was him. Or rather, a shape wearing his outline, a distorted memory of his presence, repeating itself with the same obsessive persistence he showed in life. Another silhouette crawled from beneath the bed, thin arms pulling a thin body forward, hair dragging across the floor in a soft, deliberate scrape. A third shape leaned against the door, its hands pressed flat against the wood exactly where he used to stand. None of them spoke. None of them breathed. They simply existed, occupying the places he once claimed, as if the house had absorbed his fixation and was now returning it to me in its own language. My chest tightened, my breath fractured. The room pulsed with an unseen heartbeat, slow and cold. Then, in the paralysis, a realization slipped into me like a whispered answer. The wardrobe girl and he were connected not by blood, not by story, by pattern. Both had crossed boundaries. Both had appeared where they shouldn't be. Both repeated the same curated behaviors, watching, following, memorizing, mimicking what they believed people should do. This wasn't just haunting. It was imitation, replication, something trying to learn its way into a life by copying the shape of whoever left the deepest imprint. When the paralysis finally broke, the room cleared instantly. No silhouettes, no crawling forms, no breath against the door. Just silence, as though the house itself had exhaled, But the truth stayed. Something had found me. Not the girl, not the man. Something behind both of them. A pattern older than either story. I learned later that the wardrobe girl wasn't the beginning. She wasn't even the first warning. The pattern had started long before I recognized the shape of it, with objects, scraps, and quiet offerings left in places where no one should have left anything. It began with a straw doll. It appeared outside my apartment door one morning, placed neatly at the center of the welcome mat. No footsteps in the hallway, no neighboring doors opening, no hint of who or what had left it. The doll was small, no taller than my hand, woven crudely from dry reeds, its arms crossed over its chest as though holding something invisible. A thin thread of red twine was wrapped around its middle. I should have thrown it away immediately, but something about it felt familiar. Not the object itself, but the intention I left it on the kitchen counter, planning to deal with it later. By evening, the twine had unraveled on its own, trailing across the counter like something crawling. The next morning, the doll was gone. In its place lay a folded slip of paper, yellowed, brittle, smelling faintly of earth. No handwriting, just a faint mark in the center, a symbol I had seen once before on an old bracelet his ex-girlfriend used to wear, a girl he spoke about in fragments, with a tone that wavered between longing and fear. She had practiced rituals, he once said, with a half-laugh that didn't reach his eyes. I told myself it was a coincidence, but then the violence began, not from outside, from him. His presence, once silent and persistent, turned frantic. Calls at all hours, messages repeating the same lines, shadows outside my building pacing faster, breath at the door growing uneven. One night, I found scratches near the lock, deep, jagged marks as though someone had dragged metal across the door in a fit of controlled rage. The pattern was almost symmetrical, too deliberate to be random. Another night I found blood smeared on the stairwell railing. Not much, just enough to trace a handprint. The shape was wrong, too thin, too long, almost childlike. As his behavior escalated, so did the presence in my home. Lights dimmed when I entered, mirrors fogged even without heat. The air felt crowded. Corners deepened, windows breathed inward on windless nights, and always, always something lingered at the edge of sight, a shadow bending slightly forward, head tilted just enough to remind me of someone I had once seen climbing a ceiling. I realized then that the wardrobe girl wasn't a separate entity. She was part of the same shape, a reflection, a repetition, a symptom of something older than any of us. The curse, if that's what it was, didn't pass from person to person. It grew through them. It learned their patterns, borrowed their memories, copied their movements, then waited for the next host. One night, the boundary broke. I woke to the sound of footsteps inside my home, soft, bare, unsteady, not walking, dragging. Each step carried the weight of someone unsure of how feet should work. I tried to move, but my limbs refused again. Sleep paralysis held me flat. The sound grew closer, slow, measured, approaching the bed. Then I saw it, a figure bending over me, its face hidden by long strands of dark hair. Not the girl, not him. Something between them, as though both impressions had merged into one shape that no longer needed to imitate perfectly. Hands, too many joints, too thin, pressed against the mattress. The bed sank under the weight of something that shouldn't weigh anything. A voice rose near my ear, not whispered, not spoken, just placed into the air beside me. Here. Not an answer, not a warning, A statement. The same word he used to send when he wanted me to know he was nearby. The same tone the girl had used when she said the church was her home here. As if claiming the space. As if marking it. My body seized. The air folded inward. And the figure leaned closer. So close I could hear the faint shifting of something inside its chest, like twigs snapping slowly underwater. Then, without transition, it was gone. The room brightened. The weight lifted. My body responded again, but the impression remained. Of hands on the mattress, of hair brushing my cheek, of something crawling upward through the walls the way the girl had. For days I avoided sleep. For weeks the silence felt too heavy, like the house was holding its breath. For months I convinced myself it was over. It wasn't. Because the curse didn't break. It paused, it watched, and it waited for another opening. The last sign came when I least expected it, on a morning so ordinary it barely felt real. I was making coffee when a soft tapping echoed from the hallway. Slow, familiar, not a knock, a single, deliberate tap. Then two, then three. Exactly the rhythm the wardrobe girl used on the ceiling that night. I froze. The sound repeated, slightly louder, slightly closer. And as the air tightened around me, as the walls gathered the silence like breath before a whisper, I heard it again. The same small, precise sound that began everything. Pat, pat, pat. And I knew something had returned. Not for the house, not for the past, for me. And one night, the same sound returned. Soft at first, then closer, as if it had been waiting all along. This is where tonight's story ends. I'll return with something even darker next time. Don't forget to leave your comment, your like, and your precious subscription.